The Modus themes are an incredibly configurable pair of high contrast color themes, one light and one dark, that can make your Emacs experience a lot more enjoyable if you spend the time to learn how to use them. They were created by Protesilau Stavru, otherwise known to the Emacs community as Prot, with the goal of producing a set of color themes that conform to the high standards of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines AAA color contrast rules. Now, I know that sounds like a mouthful, but what it really means is that these themes should make it easy to distinguish between important elements on screen, making them much more readable while also reducing eye strain, which is very important if you're staring at your Emacs all day long like I am. The themes also provide colors for many useful packages, both built-in and community authored. So if you use a lot of third-party packages, there's a good chance that the Modus themes will provide some colorization for certain aspects that fit into the overall scheme of the themes themselves. So if you're looking forward to learning about these themes, click like on the video, and if you've already used them before, just leave a comment below and let me know what you think about them. All right, so the good news is that if you already have Emacs 28, or specifically 28.1, the official release of the 28 series, the Modus themes are actually built in, which is pretty great if you want to have a minimal Emacs configuration without installing a whole bunch of community packages. These themes are already there in the box. And that also fits into the theme of our Emacs from Scratch V2 series, where we basically are trying to create a full configuration using only things that come in the box. So that's the reason why we're covering this video as part of the series. So if you don't have Emacs 28.1, which is possible if your Linux distribution doesn't have it packaged yet, or if you haven't been able to find it yet for other platforms, I think it should be available for Windows and macOS by now, then you can still install the Modus themes by following the thorough installation section of the Modus Themes manual. There's a few different ways that you can install it if you just read through that part. But the most straightforward way is to use the built-in package.el package manager in Emacs to pull the package from the GNU ELPA, which is the official sanctioned repository for Emacs packages. So you can use meta-x package install, press return, then type in Modus themes, and then press return again. It will install that package, and then you should be able to follow along with what we're doing in this video. One other reason why you might want to install this package is that the version that comes built into Emacs is going to be out of date by the time that you're watching this, because there's constantly development being done on this package. So if you find that things are sort of not exactly what you see in this video, probably you just need to update the package and try what's the latest based on the documentation. Okay, so once you've got it installed, or if you are using Emacs 28.1, the next step is to activate the theme. So the Modus Themes package comes with two theme definitions. One is the light theme, which is Modus Operandi, and the dark theme, which is Modus Vivendi. And we can load either of these themes with the load theme command. So I'm going to jump over to a very basic Emacs configuration here, basically following along from what we've been doing in the series so far. I'm going to use Alt-X or Meta-X. Whoops, let me get to the right Emacs instance here. And then I'm going to say load theme. You can see here at the bottom in the echo area, I'm typing this. Load custom theme. I'm going to say Modus Vivendi. And I can use tab to complete that. And now we've turned on the Modus Vivendi dark theme. So as you can see here, it's a pretty simple theme. It doesn't really look like there's a whole lot of stuff going on here. The colors are nice, but there's not really a lot of customization. But we will figure out how to make it look a lot better than this. So if you've ever tried the Modus themes before and the first thing you saw is something that didn't look like it was colored very much, just stick with the video and you'll see how you can make it look a lot better. So we're going to look at a few different files here to compare and contrast how the themes are looking for us. So let me see if I can pull up the readme.org file. We're going to look at an org file, which, as if you can see right now, pretty basic, not a lot of colorization on the headings, or no changes in text size or anything. We just see some links being colored. It looks pretty basic as it is. You can see that there's some code text that is colored a little bit, but that's pretty much it so far. I'm also going to try to open up a C language source file if I have a folder around. Let's see if I do. Let's see, which one is this? Source. Yeah, let's just pull up main.c here. And it's a little bit more colorization in a C language file. It does look pretty nice. There's some sort of muted colors, sort of more on the pastel side of things. So even though the contrast between colors is pretty good, where you can definitely tell the difference between different symbols in the text, the colors are fairly nice. So at least it does look pretty good by default. So if you want to make the theme selection permanent in your configuration, you can actually add this line to your init.el file. Basically just to call the load theme command directly, pass in the symbol for the name of which theme that you want, like modus vivendi or modus operandi, and then pass in true or T as the second parameter, which basically tells Emacs, this is a safe theme, don't bug me about it, just load it please. So if you don't know exactly what I mean when I say putting it in your init.el file, check out this other video that I made called the basics of Emacs configuration, and that will tell you exactly how to go edit that file and put this configuration line in there so that you can load this theme every time that you pull up your Emacs config. So I'm actually going to go do the same thing right now in mine. So let me just jump back over to it. I'll jump back to, well, let me just fix that. All right, jump back into init.el. I never had it pulled up. That explains some things. Let's go to README. This is what happens when you have two Emacs sessions running simultaneously. All right, let's look at init.el. There we go. So I'm going to put in load theme modus vivendi T. Now, let me just re-eval the buffer just to make sure everything is in good shape. So let me use Alt-X and then eval buffer. And we're going to use eval buffer a lot during this video just to refresh the settings that we've been typing in here to customize this theme. All right. So there's a section in the Modus Themes manual called Enable and Load that could be helpful if you want to have a little bit more information on how to load everything correctly. There are some details that are important for various different things, but as you can see, if you're just using what's in the box in Emacs 28.1, there's not a whole lot to worry about. But if you have trouble loading the theme, definitely go check out this section of the manual, and it will be helpful to you. Okay, so we've already taken a look at what the base dark Modus theme looks like by opening up a few different files. And like I said, the thing you notice right away is that the theme is pretty simple, but we're going to fix that as we go on. Now, one thing that's interesting is that it's very easy to toggle between the light theme and the dark theme by using the Modus Themes toggle command. So if you use Alt-X and type in Modus Themes toggle, it will give you access to, the light theme. So if I were to run meta-x Modus Themes toggle, now it does, well, interesting that it did that. Let me actually just restart this Emacs session because I think that there's something going on with it. Okay, I've got my Emacs session restarted. I think I had a custom config file that was blocking things. So let's just go back again and try to run this Modus Themes toggle. And now everything is successful and we have the light theme loaded. So the nice thing about this command is that it gives you the ability to switch between the light and dark color theme at any time. So let's say you're going between very dark environments to very light environments as you use your laptop, move around different places during the day. If you need to have a light theme to be in a very bright environment, then you can easily hit that Modus Themes toggle to switch to it. But if you get back to like a dark environment, or maybe you're going to give a presentation to people and you want one versus the other, you can always just hit Modus Themes toggle to switch back to the other. So the next thing we're going to do is just start looking into theme customization, because by default, loading a theme is easy, but if you want to make it look better, which is the whole point of this video, we're going to go take a look at how to do that. So the Modus themes are highly customizable, unlike other Emacs themes. There's probably others that are slightly customizable here and there, but this one takes the cake. You could change pretty much everything. So I'm going to show you how this theme customization works and also how to refer to the manual so that you know what to try and to find the settings that work for you, because everybody's different. Everybody's going to want different things changed. And since you can change a lot of things, just like in Emacs, you're going to want to look at this stuff yourself and see what works for you. But I don't plan to show the effect of every possible setting for this theme because the video would be an hour long. You don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. So let's just, show some interesting things that you can do with it, and then you can base your own set of customizations on what I show you today. The most important thing to keep in mind is that any variables that you set to customize this theme must come before the call to load theme in your init.el file, otherwise they won't show up correctly. And the reason why this is the case is that when the theme gets loaded, it's looking at these variables to get the values that you want to configure before it actually sets all of the faces and colors and everything inside of Emacs. So you must set those variables first so that the theme has access to them. There's another implication of this, which is that if you change any of those values while Emacs is running, like if you're experimenting with some of the settings to see what they do, you have to call load theme again to reload the theme so that you can see the results of the things that you're setting. So just keep that in mind when you're playing with things. If you set variables for the theme and things don't change, reload the theme, and it should actually show the changes that you made. So there are an abundance of configuration options or customization options. There's a section in the Modus Themes manual called Customization Options that goes through all of that. I highly recommend going to give that a look because it will tell you a lot about things that I don't even mention in this video. And one last really important thing that I want to mention, the settings available in the built-in version of Modus Themes inside of Emacs 28.1 might be different than what you read on the manual website. So whenever Emacs gets shipped, whatever packages are inside are kind of like a snapshot in time. And the Modus Themes package is continually developed. So new things are being added, things are being changed. So the things that are in the built-in version may be different than what you find in the package that you install on GNU-ELPA, and also the publicly available manual that's on Protectilau's website. So make sure that you, whenever you're trying to test some of these settings, you're using the right values. Now, if I do something in this video that whenever you try it doesn't work right for you, there's two options. One is to use the metax describe variable command to describe the particular variable that we're configuring, and then take a look at the documentation to see what values it supports and what the expected behavior should be. That's the best place to look because it's always going to tell you the right thing based on which version of Modus Themes you have inside of Emacs. The other option is just to install the latest version of the package because that should be up to date with what's on the website. So you can do either of these things depending on whether you want to install the package or not. Okay, customizing the UI. One of the easiest ways to make the overall Emacs UI look better is to customize how the Modus Themes style it. So some of the things you can easily customize are like the mode line, the tab bar, any buttons that show up like those that are in the customization UI of Emacs, completion interfaces like iComplete, or even third-party ones like Selectrum, Vertigo, Helm, Ivy, etc. Text selections, line numbers, and a whole lot of other things. Pretty much anything you see in Emacs can be customized with the Modus theme. Obviously, you can customize all these things with other approaches in Emacs, but we're talking specifically about how to do it with the Modus themes today. So we're only going to cover 3 of these UI customizations in the interest of time. There's another section I have after this that talks about syntax highlighting and another about org mode. So we're not going to go into just only these 3. We'll do other stuff as well. So let's face it, the mode line is one of the most ever-present parts of Emacs UI, so it makes sense to start there first and try to improve the look of it. So there's a variable called Modus Themes mode line that it makes it possible to customize 3 different aspects of the mode line appearance. And each of these aspects has specific symbols that you use to customize its behavior. Now, pay attention to this pattern because this shows up quite a lot in the configuration variables of the Modus themes. Once you learn how this pattern works, you will be prepared to do the other configuration variables as well. So the 3 aspects are the border of the mode line and its appearance. There's 3 values that you could use for that: borderless, 3D, and moody. There's also the background color, whether it has an accented version of the color, which is like a richer version of the color or not. And also the size and padding of the text. But this is one of those places where the things that are in the public manual do not line up with what's in Emacs 28.1. I believe the height setting does not work in the same way in the built-in version. So height and padding are available in the latest version of the package that you can install from GNU-ELPA, or at least at the time of this video. And then in Emacs 28.1, there is a setting called padded. All right, so you can combine all these settings together. You can pick and choose to come up with the right thing that you want to see. And like I said before, it's important to pay attention to how this works because this is how a lot of things are configured with the Modus themes. So let's stop talking and start showing. So I'm going to copy over this little snippet of configuration. I'm going to drop it in right before the load theme. Like I mentioned before, we want to make sure that the settings that we're putting in come before the load theme call. Now, the first thing we're going to do, we're going to set the Modus Themes mode line to borderless. So if you look down here at the mode line, you'll see that the mode line has a border all the way around the sides. So if I were to go and set the setting to borderless and run eval buffer to reevaluate my whole configuration, what it's going to do is change that mode line so it doesn't have any border anymore. So this just sort of shows you the basics how this works. I don't know if it works to actually just leave a symbol directly and not have a list. Let's try that really quickly. I'm going to run eval buffer. Yeah, it seems to have not done anything different. So typically you have a set of symbols in a list whenever you're typing this stuff in. So as long as you follow this pattern, everything should work just fine. Now I'm going to show you a couple other things. So let's combine a couple things here together. I'm going to take this padded out first. So the accented and borderless, we're going to put accented and borderless together. So I'm going to go ahead and run eval buffer again. And now you'll see that the color of the mode line changed to purple. And that's basically what accented means in this case, that it just picks a different color for the mode line to make it a little bit stand out a little bit more. We can also pick the 3D option that I mentioned before. So anything that affects the border, like borderless or 3D or moody, they're not really compatible together. So I'm just going to take borderless out when I put 3D in here. I'm going to run eval buffer again, and now you're going to see, which is kind of hard to tell on this screen, that there's like kind of a little bit of a 3D border around. There's no line on the bottom, but there is on the top and the side that gives it a little bit of a 3D look, but that's just sort of a way that you can do that. There's also the moody theme, which not sure exactly what the purpose of it is. There's another mode line package called Moody, but I think it's written by Tarsius. I think this is meant to either emulate or work together with that, but I don't know. Probably not worth using unless you use that package. So I'm just going to leave that off. I'm going to go back to borderless. Then I'm also going to add that padding that I mentioned before. So I'm going to run eval buffer one more time. It didn't seem to actually do anything this time, which is interesting. Padded, I think is what it was actually supposed to be, padded. Yes, so I think it adds a little bit of padding around the text so that it is a bit, so the mode line looks a little bit thicker, kind of reminiscent of Doom mode line. So that's another thing you could do if you want to. So that gives you an idea of what you can do to configure the mode line when you're looking at this stuff. Also, let's quickly take a look at that in the light theme just to make sure that we see the comparison. So I'm going to run meta-x and then run that Modus Themes toggle, and we'll see that we have a similar look in the light theme version where there's a sort of more purplish color. We still have the bigger padding around, and there's no border. So the same things apply in both the light and the dark themes. So if you want to kind of try that out, see which one you like better, light versus dark, you can easily do that by running that toggle command. I'm not going to run the toggle command for everything we try because it would just take forever. So we're just going to kind of cruise through. And if you want to look at the light theme versions, you should go try out all these settings that I'm showing you. Okay, so the next thing is, oh, by the way, I'll include links to the manual in all these sections so you can actually go look at the show notes in the description, links in the description below, and you'll be able to go find the configuration documentation for all this stuff to learn more about what you can do with it. All right, selection regions. Whenever you select text in Emacs, that's called an active region. The Modus Themes provided a variable called Modus Themes region to enable you to change their appearance. And there's 3 values that you could put in, similarly to what we had before. Which are accented, which once again changes the color of the region. BG only, which doesn't remove the highlighting of the foreground text, which I'll show you in a minute what that actually means. And then no extend, which doesn't extend the region color all the way over to the width of the window. So you really need to see these to understand what they do. So let's pop back over to our Emacs config, and then I will drop these in, well, let's see, right here. I should be using rectangular selection, but So let me start with accented. So before we do accented, let me just select some text. I'm going to use shift arrow keys, and you can see that the default selection has a gray background, which is kind of plain. Also, whenever you select over some text, the highlighting of that text goes away. So this purple set Q now will just be white after I select over it. So now let's run, come on. Let's run eval buffer to evaluate this accented setting for Modus Themes region. And now whenever I start to select things, it has a nice purple color, which sort of fits in with the ethos of this theme. But what if you're not so crazy about the purple color? Maybe you want to try something different. Let's try the BG only. So once we run this, what you'll see is that when we make a selection, it doesn't actually clear out the colors of the highlighted text inside the buffer, which could be nice if you need to see that highlighting to be able to tell what you're looking at in a complicated source file. It also uses a light or kind of a muted blue color for the background of the selection, which I kind of like better actually. So I kind of prefer the BG only setting. Now this next one, which is no extend, as you can see when we make a selection, the selection box goes all the way over to the right side of the window. So you can use the no extend setting to change that. If I run eval buffer again and make a selection, now the selection only goes to the end of the line on each line. Now, in my personal opinion, that's not quite as helpful because it can be helpful sometimes to see that whole selection across so you know exactly which lines you've selected. Otherwise, it's harder to pick up on, excuse me, harder to pick up on the visual cues. So I think that for me, the BG only setting is the best one out of all of those, but you should try them out and see which ones you like best. All right, so let's hop back over to the slides. All right, the next thing is completion coloring. So this is a nice option to set if you intend to turn on iComplete mode for enhanced mini buffer completions, or maybe if you want to use a community package like Vertico, Selectrum, Helm, Ivy, etc. The Modus Themes completions variable can be used to control how completion candidates are highlighted, especially when they match part of the search term. So there's 3 settings for this. Well, one of them is nil, excuse me. And the other 2 are moderate and opinionated. So moderate is just a slight customization, which isn't too distracting, but it does make things stand out a little bit better. And then opinionated makes it a lot more rich and in your face. So we're gonna try both of these by turning on iComplete mode so that we can actually see some of this stuff working. We'll jump back over to our configuration, and then I'll use MetaX and then iComplete mode. So now if I use MetaX and type in IC, you can see down here there's a little bit different presentation in the mini buffer whenever I'm starting to type things. And then you can see there is a little bit of highlighting on the text whenever I show the completion buffer. So I'm gonna kill that really quickly, and then we're gonna go copy the configuration that I forgot to grab here. We're gonna set the minimal and opinionated settings for this. If I can remember how to get back to this Emacs. All right, let's go right here and press in Control Y. Okay, so now I'm gonna use eval buffer. And you'll see now that if we go into the completions, I type in IC, I think these are not very different. They might be a little bit richer. If I press tab, I think these may also sort of be, maybe it's the same at the end. I think they may be a little bit richer. If we try the opinionated version, I think that actually shows a little bit more. So let's go here and set opinionated instead, and then use eval buffer, and then use IC for iComplete. The colors are a bit different now. You can see they're a bit more purple, and these prefixes are a little bit more of a deep blue that stands out more as what they had before. It's really just a matter of preference. I don't think there's like a huge benefit to either one of the others, so you really just have to try them out and see which one you like better. So for me, I would probably just try them a little while and see. I can't really say which one I think is better at the moment. So this setting actually has a lot more kind of inner settings that you can use to customize more specific elements of completion UIs. So definitely if you use iComplete or the others that I mentioned before, go check out the manual here, excuse me, here that I have a link to, so that you can see what else you can use to configure the look of this, because I think there's a lot of stuff that you might be interested in there. Okay, now let's make the text in our buffers look better too. As we saw in the beginning, it looks a little bit basic, not really a whole lot that's going on there. So there's a few useful options that we can use to customize how text in buffers looks. There is the Modus Themes bold construct setting, which if you set it to T, increases the number of bolded syntax elements, like maybe type names and other important syntax elements. There's Modus Themes italic constructs, where if you set it to T, it will make some things italicized in the buffers, like let's say comments in your language of choice. Modus Themes paren match, which makes parentheses in buffers have a more obvious highlighting, which can be really helpful for writing Lisp style code that has a lot of parentheses in it. And then Modus Themes syntax, which gives you even more things that you can tweak in the highlighting of various different elements. So it's more about colors and whatnot for that one. So I'm not going to show you the effect of all of these possible values because it would take a lot of time, but I will show you the effect of each of the variables so you can decide whether to use them in your own configuration. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab this little block here, and then I will paste it in right here. Okay, so we're going to start with the bold constructs. So let me go ahead and save this and then use eval buffer. Now, let me see if there's anything here. I think the set cues here might be bolded now. If we jump over to, let's say the, do I still have that open? No, I don't have the main.c file open. Let's go to the main.c file. Let's go to mesh source main.c. And you can see that like int and char are bolded, where other things like main, program path, etc. are not bolded. So Some things get bolded, other things do not. It's really just based on the person who wrote the theme deciding, which one gets selected for that. There's also the italic constructs, which I'll turn on right now. I'm going to run that with eval buffer. Now you can see that the comments in this buffer have now been italicized, which is a bit different than what they looked like before. You also go back into this main.c. We can see that the comments here are also italicized, but pretty much everything else is not. So I think this must be very special parts of the buffers that get italicized like that. So it won't show up very much. It will for certain things that maybe you do want to sort of have a distinct look to them. For parenthesis matching, I'm going to set this bold intense underline. So right now, if you put your cursor near a parenthesis, you can see there's kind of like a brown background to the parenthesis, which, you can see it a little bit, but it doesn't stand out very much. If I run this setting now with eval buffer, you'll see that the parenthesis now is bolded. It has a purple background because of this intense setting, and it's also underlined. Now, personally, I'm not really a fan of the underline, so I'd probably just turn that off, but bold and intense together is a good way to make it a little bit more obvious whenever you're looking at a match. So like if I put the cursor right there, you can see this one pop out pretty well. So that could be pretty useful for editing Lisp style code. Now, this setQ modus theme syntax has a few different variables that do change the way things look quite significantly in the colorization of buffers. Like the actual colors being used, like this purple right here on setQ, will be changed to something else entirely depending on which settings you use. So first of all, we're going to start with this faint setting. So let me run eval buffer. And what it does is basically, I think it just chooses more desaturated versions of the same colors. So if I go back into this C file, everything here looks a bit more desaturated. And if you're used to themes that don't have quite a strong contrast between the colors, this might be more appealing to you because it does look a little bit more muted. Let's also go look at an org file, not Emacs from hell. Let's see, Emacs from scratch, readme. Okay. I think this one also, it's not very different because there's not a whole lot of colorization going on, but you can tell that there's some things like some of the headings have a little bit of color. So anyway, we'll try the alt syntax now. I'm going to set it separately because it does have another set of changes that it makes. So I will run eval buffer one more time. Now you can see that the setQ is green, which is completely different. I think it just completely selects a different set of colorization. So if we go back to the main.c file, we can see that the colors have been rotated a bit. Strings are different colors, symbols are different colors, etc. You can combine that with faint if you want to make those be more muted. So if I type in faint here and run eval buffer, then they're more subdued. But it sort of reminds me of the previous color scheme. So maybe they don't actually combine very well. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but in fact, let's turn alt syntax off to see if I'm wrong about that entirely. I think the setQ is going to turn back to a purplish color after I do that. Yeah, it turns back to purple. So let me just put that back, run eval buffer again. Yeah, so putting alt syntax and faint together does have the effect that the colors will be more desaturated whenever you use faint. Another setting that you can use, which is more orthogonal to these things, is green strings and yellow comments. So if you, for some reason, want strings to stand out, want to make them look green, you can do that. You can also make comments look yellow. So let me eval the buffer here. And then you can see now that the comments have become kind of an orangish yellowish color here. Excuse me. And then if we go to the main.c file, we can see that the strings are green and the comments are yellow. Personally, I would probably only use the yellow comments one. The green strings one, I don't really understand the benefit behind it because I feel like, the string colorization is good enough as it is because it's consistent. So if we were to go change that again, go back to main.c, the strings are blue now. So I don't really know if it's a big benefit, but some people out there might like it. So that is there if you want to give it a shot. All right, let's go back to the slides. So my actual preference is not to set the Modus Themes syntax. Like just leave the colors the way they are and then turn on the bolded and italicized sections because those do actually give you some benefit. Some things stick out a little bit more to you whenever you're looking at the source code. Okay, now another really interesting part of customization with the way that Emacs looks is to customize how org mode files get displayed. And you saw that we have that org file from before where it's not really, let's see, let's go back to readme.org and let's split this buffer actually so we can tweak things and see the effects in real time. So the is very simple looking. The title doesn't really have much going on. There's a little bit of colorization, but not too much. The headings don't have a whole lot going on. We're going to fix that. We're going to change things up so that it does look a bit different. I'll just shrink that down. So first of all, you can customize the heading size and style. So one of the biggest ways to make your org mode files look nicer is to make headings stand out from normal document text using bigger font sizes and different colors. So there is the Modus Themes headings variable that provides a number of ways to customize display of headers at different levels of the document. If you follow this link, you'll go to the documentation page. It gives you more information. But similar to the other settings, there's like these various symbols you can use to describe what changes you want to be made for different heading levels of your org files. So first of all, there's the background setting, which sets a background color for headings. There's the overline setting that draws a line above the heading, which can be useful for sort of like separating sections in your documents. There's the rainbow setting that makes heading text color colorized, but it also changes the color per level so that each level looks more unique, which is pretty nice. You can also put in a floating point number that controls the text scale. So it's like if you put in 1.5 for the text scale, that's 150% of the size of the normal text size that you've chosen in Emacs. So you can scale things up or down if you want to, using a floating point number for the text scale. There's also a number of names or symbol names for different font weights like bold, semi-bold, medium, that you can use to control the font weight of various different headings as well. Definitely take a look at the documentation for the full list because there's a lot of symbol names for that type of thing. So you define the set of customizations you use for each heading level, and then you can also set a default value that gets applied to any levels that aren't specifically configured. Now, the syntax for this is a little bit more complicated than the other things we've looked at so far because we're basically saying that the Modus Themes heading variable is a list of pairs, the pair having the number, the index number of the heading level, like 1 is like the biggest heading, 2 is the next biggest, 3 is the next biggest, and so on. I think there's like maybe 7 or 8 levels. I'm not sure exactly how many. And then the last one here is T, which is like the default for all things that you have not specified before then already. And then the second part of the pair here is another list, which is containing these symbols of the things that we mentioned before here to configure that specific level. And then for T, whatever you put here gets applied to anything else that hasn't been customized yet. Also, it's very important to note that if you want the heading scale to work, you also need to set this Modus Themes scale headings value or variable to true so that that does get put into effect. I don't know why that isn't set by default, but you have to do it if you want this part of the configuration to work. So let's hop back in here. I'm going to use Control Y to paste these in. And I'm just going to run this so we can just take a look at what it looks like. We're not going to play with the settings too much, but we'll just sort of see what it does to it. So what I'll do is use eval buffer again. And in the file during parsing, I probably forgot a parenthesis there. So let me just do that again. Okay, now you can immediately see things have changed here in this buffer. The title text is much bigger. The first heading text is much bigger. One thing you can't really see very easily is that there are lines over the tops of these headings. So that does give you more of a sense of separation between the major headings. Also, they have a background color and they have a specific foreground text color. And if you scroll down to see one of the second level headings, this has more of a pink color for the text. Hard to tell because there's a link here. It also has a more pinkish looking background. And the farther you go down with the headings, you can see that, let me just jump down here. I'll create another heading at level 3, test level 3, and then another one at level 4, test level 4. So you can see that there's different colors per level, and let's go to level 5, 6. Well, I think they still do rainbow, which is interesting. But anyway, the point being that you can customize each of these levels to your heart's content, and then make this document look a lot better than when it started. So it goes from a very simple look to a nice look with very little work involved. Now, if you want to go really far with customizing org, the way that org buffers look, there's external packages you can use. If you look at my first Emacs from Scratch series on the org mode video, I show how to go through all that and make it look even prettier. But for something that comes in the box in Emacs, this is pretty good, in my opinion, without having to learn the vagaries of setting faces. So let's see, is there anything else I wanted to mention there? Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, just take a look at this little block of configuration and compare it to the notes from the show notes or the documentation, and then you'll see exactly how you can go and make these look however you want. All right. So source blocks, that's another thing that shows up quite often in org mode files. Like if you're writing, a blog post that has source blocks, or maybe you're doing a literate org mode configuration, you can customize how source blocks look by using the Modus Themes org blocks variable. And this accepts two values, also nil if you don't want to use it at all. One is gray background and the other is tinted background. Those are pretty self-explanatory, but the tinted background one is kind of interesting because it's dynamic based on the actual language being used in the source block. Let's jump over and take a look at that. Let me jump down to the config and I will paste this in. And we'll start with, first of all, let's look at this without setting the setting before we take a look at it. So if you take a look at a source block here, there's this begin source shell block. It looks very basic, very plain. You can't really tell that it's a block except for just the heading and the header and the footer of the block. So that's the default setting of nil. Now, if we were to go here and run the gray background setting using eval buffer, you can see that now you have a header line that goes all the way across. There's sort of a subtle grayish background color to the block itself, and then the end line also has a block color that goes all the way across. So it does give it a little bit of distinction from the surrounding text, but it's still not quite as good as it could be if you want to really see the difference between the source blocks versus the normal text. So let's switch to the tinted background version here. When I run eval buffer, what you'll see is that some of these, at first it doesn't actually do anything. And the reason why is there's another command that you have to run here to make this work for this specific setting, and that is the org mode restart command. This only is necessary in any org files that you already have open because it just needs to reevaluate how it highlights the buffer. So I'm gonna run org mode restart. And once I do that, you'll see that the shell buffer has a background of kind of like a dark green. And that is distinct from other blocks. Now, a begin source here that doesn't have any language specified won't have a background. But if I put in SH here, it will turn green. If I put in Emacs Lisp here, it'll turn purple. If I put in C here, it'll turn blue. So basically, depending on the type of language that gets put there, it will change the color of the background. Now, you can customize how the colors get selected for that. The manual actually goes through how to do that. I think I put the instruction link. Yeah, so if you click this can be customized link here, it will take you to the part of the Modus Themes manual that tells you the org mode variables you need to change if you want to update those colors that are shown for source blocks. But this is a nice setting that gives you the ability to make your documents look a little bit nicer and to make those code blocks stand out. Okay, so it's also possible to totally customize a set of colors that the Modus Themes uses for pretty much anything. I'm not going to show examples of this because it would take too much time, but I wanted to let you know about them so that if you really did want to override certain colors, you could do it. There's 3 links here for the different ways of customizing things. The first one, which is the easiest one, is overriding specific theme colors. The next one is overriding color saturation factors, and the other is overriding colors by blending with base colors. Now, some of these techniques for the second 2 are pretty advanced when it comes to Emacs Lisp. So I would say probably the best thing to do is to experiment with the built-in configuration settings a bit before you start going off into the weeds with the really deep customization. You may not ever have to touch that. So just know that it's there in case you want to customize things further, but you really don't have to do that. And in fact, I would say, if you really wanted to customize the colors that are being used, probably you should just fork the theme and just change the colors manually and save it yourself. But that's just my opinion. All right, so it's also worth looking at some of the more advanced customization options that are available in the manual, because there's way more than what I mentioned now, and it goes into detail about like specific packages, how to make the colors there look better as well. So if you're gonna go deep into Modus Themes customization, definitely take a look at the advanced customization options section of the manual to get a lot more details on how to do that. So there's plenty more that you can customize with these themes, so do yourself a favor and check out the Modus Themes manual to learn more about all the options you have available to you. And if you want a quick way to get started, you can copy this configuration that I have here as a starting point. Just go look at the show notes link in the description, and then you just go copy and paste this into your configuration file. In fact, let me just go drop it in to this config we've been working on here. And what I set here should override everything, so it won't really be a problem. So I'll just paste this in, and I will delete that line. And then I'll use eval buffer to load it up. And then if we want to take a quick look at what it would look like with the light theme, we can go to, let's see, where is it? Modus Themes toggle, and we can see what it looks like with the light theme. So let's jump back over to main.c, and that's pretty much it. That's how you can go and customize the Modus themes. So hopefully that was helpful for you today. If you come up with some really cool theme configurations that you want to share with other people, come share them on the System Crafters Discord or the IRC channel. If you click this link, you may have to accept the SSL certificate warning. Unfortunately, I need to fix that. But if you try to post links to configurations in the comments on YouTube, YouTube will eat them. So that's why I'm saying come to the Discord or the IRC channel if you want to share those, because otherwise they may disappear. So anyway, thanks so much for watching this video today. I hope it was helpful to you. Leave a like if you liked it. Leave a comment if you have more questions. And until next time, happy hacking. We'll see you.